You can't beat a classic. Why use an over-engineered solution when what you need has already been in service 50 years? This time, we're covering the G2A4 rifle. Rifles have a long history of military use, with the first use of rifled barrels starting in the 19th century. The simple act of imparting spin on a projectile was a game changer. No longer was ranged combat a question of large volleys of inaccurate fire. Instead, the rifleman could pick out targets with some degree of accuracy, ushering in a more cautious era of combat fought from trenches. Since then, the rifleman has become the core of any fighting force, and despite some refinements, their weapon retains the same basic design elements of the earliest rifles. The G2A4 is such a weapon, a tool built for battle, of solid construction and capable of delivering a deadly bullet as accurately as its holder is able. It fires a 6.19 by 97mm LEC cartridge, a high-velocity round that relies on kinetic energy for its stopping power. There's no fancy materials or smart munition, just a deadly hunk of lead travelling at supersonic speed. So while the G2 lacks a certain finesse, it doesn't hold back when it comes to raw power. Its damage is quite impressive, although modern armour can put a dent in its ballistic impact. You'll kill an enemy pilot with 3 rounds to the body at a close range. Land a shot to the head, and it's all over. Unprotected by armour, the G2 will obliterate an opponent with just a single headshot. At a longer range, you'll need up to 4 body shots to kill, or 2 headshots. Versus Titans, damage is sufficient but hampered by the semi-automatic fire. With many trigger pulls required to down a Titan, you may be better off making use of an automatic secondary or your anti-Titan ordnance instead. Effective range is relatively good, with the weapon able to shut down targets quickly in most engagements. At a long range, you will need an extra shot to kill, so mobile targets may be able to escape your wrath if they scarper to cover. Recoil can be a factor at such ranges too, with slower use of the trigger necessary to land successive shots. Within your effective range, the G2's kick is seldom a factor. At a close to mid-range, you can fire as fast as the weapon is able. Hipfire can prove surprisingly effective despite significant spread, with the higher damage and potential for a critical headshot. Rate of fire is less impressive, however, topping out at just 420 rounds per minute. This is perhaps enough if you're able to direct your shots accurately, but in any case, caution should be exercised when firing, as magazine capacity is somewhat limited at just 14 rounds. Reloads are frequent then, but not too painful, taking 2.2 seconds to complete. If you can handle a semi-automatic weapon, the G2 will treat you well. It's not as nimble as an SMG, but still gives you the ability to take charge. Aim time is relatively swift, at 280 milliseconds, and switch time's fairly average, at 0.8 seconds to deploy. Your mobility is in line with all other rifles, at 95% of the base speed. The G2A4 is capable of filling a general-purpose role, with a slightly stronger emphasis on ranged combat when compared to the R101 carbine. If your trigger finger is up to the task, there's nothing stopping you from taking an aggressive tag with it. Otherwise, the weapon suits a more conservative marksman role. Your loadout should focus on landing accurate shots with the weapon, and as such, your optical choice is amongst the most important you'll make. The G2's iron sights are surprisingly open, with a holographic reticle indicating your point of aim. The H-Cog is arguably a superior replacement, with a slightly more open construction, granting a better view on target. Both are quite suited to close or mid-range work, so if you do plan on being aggressive, these close-range options are the best choice. Next, the AOG offers 2.4 times magnification, granting a better view on targets further away. This extra reach might be beyond the weapon's effective range, however, so the more balanced 2.1 times zoom of the holosight is probably a more well-rounded pick for mid to long-range engagements. Overall, I'd elect either the HCOG or hollow sight, depending on your preference. As far as your weapon's mod is concerned, you have 3 choices, one of which is unique to the G2A4. The match trigger allows you to fire the G2 as quickly as you're able, allowing for a huge damage output potential. However, I would advise against equipping it, as it does come with major downsides. First, to alleviate feed issues, your magazine size is nearly cut in half, with just 8 rounds between reloads. Secondly, modifications to the weapon's gas system means you'll experience much more recoil, meaning many of your shots may go wayward from a mid-range out. Next, the suppressor will keep you off radar when you fire, but this comes at the cost of damage. You'll need 1 additional shot to kill at all ranges, so with the higher damage weapons, the stealthy option tends to be a poor deal. Finally, the extended mag will increase your available capacity from 14 rounds to 18 instead. While only a slight increase, the lack of associated detriment means it is probably the best overall choice. 4 rounds might not seem like much, but in the cases where a reload fouls your chances of a kill, they can be critical. As for the rest of your build, the G2 is versatile enough to allow for some freedom. There are few specific demands made by the weapon. The only essential part is your sidearm, and you'll do well to remember it in combat. With a short magazine comes frequent reloads, and a lapse in your ability to defend yourself. It can be worth equipping the auto pistol to save your trigger finger during rodeo attacks. It's also an effective backup in close quarters. Otherwise, consider Power Cell to take maximum advantage of your tactical ability. The decreased cooldown means you'll spend more time with an active advantage. The key to effective use of the G2 is all in the trigger. With a semi-automatic weapon, you have the ability to modulate your rate of fire to suit the range of engagement. At a distance, a slower cadence will allow you to land more shots, although this can be difficult if your opponent is on the move. If you have such an opportunity, it might be wise to line up a headshot before alerting them, ensuring a 2-hit kill at any distance. Up close, it pays to be quick on the trigger. You'll want to fire as close to the fire cap as you can muster, as to deny any automatic weapons their advantage. The G2A4 is a powerful semi-automatic weapon that rewards those able to direct its shots accurately. It boasts high damage with surprisingly good controllability, shutting down opponents quickly, while still suiting a similar role to the R101C carbine. Unfortunately, the weapon's semi-automatic fire does limit your output, and it can be difficult to accurately track a moving target while firing. Paired with a shallow magazine, you can't afford to waste shots with this weapon. And if your accuracy isn't up to snuff, an automatic weapon may suit you better. The G2 may resemble a marksman's weapon in some respects, but over long-range engagements, you might find it lacking. Its damage drop and potential 4-shot kill puts the clear ranged advantage in the hands of those wielding longbows and Krabers. Still, if you have the skills to wield it, the G2 will become a firm favourite. So, go back to the old school and teach your opponent a lesson. Thank you very much for your presence, and do join me next time when we'll be covering the M-Lock BFR. Until then, farewell.